Ravenfield recently acquired 4 new weapons, and today I will be analyzing all of them to see how they fit in the game and if they are any good. The update features the Jolt 20S, a suppressed SMG based off of the MAC-10, the Ingress 700, a new sidearm to the game based off of the Walter PPK and comes equipped with its own inspect, the Ripcord, a foldable box-like SMG based off of the PP90, and finally the new OP gun in the game, the Supernova, based off of the SA80 weapon family. Now, this update isn't anything that major, and if this was literally for any other game, I probably wouldn't care, but it's Ravenfield, and new guns are a historic event. These are the first new weapons in almost 9 years. Technically, the last weapon added was July 2020 with EA34, with the release of the Patriot tactical variant for the Spec Ops update. However, if you're willing to ignore variants and gadgets, such as the Resistance Sword in September 2019 for EA17, and the Patriot GL variant and the Thumper in 2019's EA13, then the last true new weapon to get added to the game was EA5, with the goated M1 Garrett and Bundle of Bus, which was back in October 2017. So yes, while the workshop does make vanilla gun updates relatively obsolete, it's still kind of a big deal to see an update like this come out. So now the important part. Are these guns good to use? How well do they power scale in the Ravenfield vanilla weapon universe? Let's look at the stats, starting with the Jolt. The Jolt, which has arguably the most clear role out of all the new guns. Silent, spray and pray, and close quarters combat. I'd say the most comparable current option is the Quicksilver, as it fills a somewhat similar niche. The Jolt does 24 base damage, which means it's an unfortunate 5-shot kill, and on top of that only does 10 balance damage. This actually puts the Jolt as the current weakest tracer in the game, doing less damage than a single pellet from the Eagle 76 or the Bundle of Bus. The other weak stat for this gun is its velocity of 250 meters per second, making it fairly slow, but arguably an irrelevant stat given its clear use case of being close quarters. These drawbacks seem bad, but are quite minor details compared to how crazy its other stats are. Here's where it gets insane. A fire rate of 0.05, aka 20 rounds per second. This ties the current fastest fire rate in the game, the Automatico Akimbo, with, one key difference. This gun can actually be controlled at full auto. Moving on, this all converts into a DPS of 480, which blows pretty much all other automatic weapons out of the water, and in the end has a TTK of 0.25, which is also just insanely fast. Let's do a quick comparison to its other close range neighbors, the Akimbo and the Quicksilver. On paper, the Jolt clears the Quicksilver and is somewhat competitive with the Akimbo, but we're forgetting that one key component, which is that the Akimbo's recoil is god-awful. Here is the Jolt compared to the Akimbo, and yeah, the Jolt's recoil is not only much less variable, but also is extremely consistent after the first shot. The Jolt's recoil is quote-unquote still bad, but for the output it provides is an insane trade-off. Now, comparing to the Quicksilver, we see the Jolt actually does do marginally worse, but again, you're getting double the fire rate, 180 more DPS, and the cost is a minor spread difference and 1 extra bullet to kill. Moreover, on the Jolt's recoil, it's actually extremely consistent, as the recoil's significant kick is only after the first shot, meaning your second bullet and onward operates in a pretty nice grouping. Overall, the Jolt is sort of this best of both worlds. The damage output follows closer to the Automatico Akimbo, except it plays more like the Quicksilver. The gun does struggle very heavily at longer range and does run out of ammo pretty fast, but otherwise, the Jolt knows exactly what it is and certainly does its job well. A really fun close quarters weapon to see in the game and one I've enjoyed using. Moving on to the Ingress 700, which is clearly inspired by James Bond given the name contains 007, it's the same weapon he uses, and the not so subtle reference to a special agent in the patch notes. Now, this gun is certainly an oddball. At first glance, it's pretty lackluster, dealing a fairly low 28 damage, 20 balance damage, and a slightly above average 275 meters per second for velocity. Even with the weaker damage, it is still functionally a 4-shot kill. It does have 2 less rounds than the SIND7, so is this gun just a slightly weaker SIND7? Not necessarily. Outside of the sick weapon inspect you get when you press X, this gun actually has a unique ability. The final round in the chamber does a whopping 70 damage and 200 balance damage. So either way, whoever gets shot by this will be incapacitated. In a quick recoil comparison, the Ingress appears to have a bit tighter grouping when moderately spammed compared to the SIND7, which actually has a negative recoil due to how the gun snaps and the fire rate I ended up using. This is supported further by the base spread of both guns, with the Ingress having a 0.001 base spread compared to the SIND7 at 0.004. For context, this is extremely accurate for pistols and is about the same accuracy as the Signal DMR. So overall, this gun is interesting. It's the first to have this unique mechanic that affects damage, and despite its normalcy stat-wise, it's by far the most accurate pistol, even over the Condor. I'd say I might still be partial to taking the Condor, but definitely am willing to switch to this from time to time, especially over the SI-97. The SI-97's frustration comes from its accuracy, so I'll take a slight stat debuff for an accuracy buff. The Ripcord. Truthfully, I find this gun confusing to use despite its stat line being pretty solid, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was changed in the future. I mainly do not like it because it power creeps the RK-44 and yet isn't enjoyable to use in the game. Let me explain. Here are the stat comparisons between the two guns. It does 34 damage and 34 balance damage, so the same number of bullets to kill, but more for the knockdown compared to the RK. Their velocity is equal at 300, and the fire rate is actually slightly faster at 11.8 rounds per second versus 10.5. This equates to a DPS of 400, which is above average, and a TTK of 0.255, which is also above average. In recoil, the guns are pretty similar with two key differences. The RK has more horizontal, rounded spread, whereas the Ripcord shots are more narrower. The second difference is the opening shots. The RK manages its first few shots much better, while the Ripcord jumps early and hard. On paper, I'd say the two guns' recoils are fairly even depending on your playstyle, but the Ripcord does have a better base spread of 0.001 versus 0.003, making it the more accurate gun. Here's the thing though, accuracy doesn't tell the whole story. The Ripcord has significantly worse damage falloff, and combined with the weaker knockdown, the RK is the clear winner at range despite being less accurate. What this actually tells us is that despite the damage stats, these two guns aren't really competing for the same space. The RK is more your medium range workhorse, whereas the Ripcord is a close to mid-range weapon that is capable of being accurate enough to work at distance, but the damage just isn't there to back it up. That said, there are also qualitative factors to consider, namely, the sights on this weapon are garbage. I find this thing very difficult to aim with, and at farther ranges, the sight completely obstructs the target to the point where you are practically guessing. The fact that this gun is literally accurate means you can still get shots off to connect, but overall is just frustrating to use. To me, the Ripcord feels like this odd RK-44 clone that's kind of forced to be used in close to medium ranges. And I know real life doesn't actually matter, but this gun IRL shoots 9mm compared to an AK that would shoot 7.62, so that makes sense with the damage fall off reflecting that. But overall, I'd say the stats just don't really fit this gun's profile. Given the compact and folding design of this weapon, perhaps this is the first gun we see moved to the equipment slot. It's designed to be portable and can be balanced by giving it less ammo and just reframing the entire weapon fully as just a PDW. Overall, I'd say the patch notes put it perfectly, describing it as unsure what it's good for. Still a cool weapon nonetheless. Lastly, the Supernova, and straight out of the gate, this thing is incredible. It really has no downsides and might be the new best all-rounder automatic weapon in the game. Stats-wise, it does 35 damage and 35 balance damage, meaning it's an effective 3-shot and has a velocity of 500, making it the fastest round from an automatic weapon in the game. It also has a very fast fire rate of 0.075 or 13.3 rounds per second, all converting to a DPS of 466 and an insane TTK of 0.225. On paper, this gun is absurd. And then, when you actually use it, turns out it's exactly what the numbers say it is. It's an absolute laser. This weapon does insane damage and its recoil is great for both tap firing as well as automatic. And notably, its 3-shot recoil absolutely mogs the Signal, its closest competitor. Its base spread of 0.001 makes it extremely accurate. There really is no caveat for this gun. It has the velocity and damage to be decent at range, but also has the fire rate to defend itself at close range. It also has actually usable sights, and the overall design looks incredible. The R&D department at Eagle absolutely cooked with this one because this might genuinely be the new best weapon in the game, excluding the Quad A's of course. I would talk more about this gun, but it's just good across the board. This thing is really incredible when used in bursts, and given that headshots are still supreme in this game, this thing is genuinely overpowered. So yeah, that's the newest Ravenfield weapons in almost 9 years. A close quarter monster, a viable competitor to the secondary slot, a weird rifle SMG hybrid, and a new OP weapon. Overall, happy with the update and looking forward to Weapon Pack 2. See you in the next one. Peace.